Now, Uber is facing a backlash thanks to its response from Donald Trump's immigration ban. Now, Market Watch, of all places, is reporting that people are protesting the company after they tweeted something ridiculous during the New York protest against the Muslim ban. Now, when you look at this tweet, when you hear this tweet, it's going to sound very innocuous, right? This is like a normal corporate tweet. Surge pricing has been turned off at JFK. This may result in longer wait times. Please be patient. Now, again, this fairly normal standard business tweet. Why does it got so many people pissed off? I mean, isn't turning off surge prices? Like, we've criticized surge pricing before. Like, if something happens, they jack up their rates so they can make an extra few bucks. So why are we criticizing them for doing the opposite? Well, it just happened to coincide with the New York taxi drivers going on strike and joining the protest at JFK. In fact, you have this quote from Market Watch. It said the New York Taxi Workers Alliance, with membership of 19,000 people, had called on old drivers, including those with Uber and Lyft, not to pick up passengers from JFK and to instead join the protest. The group said its membership is largely Muslim and made up of immigrants, and that it was in defense of the oppressed as well as its own drivers, and that it was speaking against the ban. So basically, the problem here that a lot of people are seeing is that during this protest, and by the way, it was like an hour-long protest, so they took an hour off driving people to JFK to go and protest, which I think is fine. A lot of people, are pissed off because Uber said, we're going to swoop in, we're going to try to make a buck. We're going to lower our rates, though, so that people won't take our competitors, but they'll end up taking us and not the taxis, which are all shut down. So we're going to make a little bit of money that we might not have actually made before. Which, of course, the problem is it might have undermined those protests. So I actually do believe that that's kind of the issue here. What's your take on this, Ron?
Well, I think like a lot more stuff has come to the surface. I mean, the kind of pro-Trump element of Uber, and a lot of people are just kind of deciding, well, I'd rather just give my business to Lyft. And now the whole kind of stigma around ride sharing services is becoming more and more talked about, and that's one of those issues where, I mean, I know we've talked about this on the show before, and in particular whenever we have Dan Sparron from Truth Mashup on the show. And when it comes to ride sharing, it's one of the few issues where I'm a little more on a side I'm not usually on, in the sense that because of the creative class, I'm not necessarily against ride sharing. And what I mean by that is, I consider the creative class people that are doing something entrepreneurial. Maybe it's something in a creative field that's especially pretty common here in LA, or maybe it's something like developing an app, developing software, starting some kind of business, whatever it may be. And they supplement their income for however long with something like Lyft or Uber. That's an entire class now in this country, for better or worse. Do I think that's the way it ought to be? Absolutely not. But that's the way it is, and we're kind of making the most of it, and we're adapting, which is something humanity needs to do, because wages are bullshit and wage discrepancy is catastrophic at this point. Until that shifts, this is the hand that we've been dealt. So things like ride sharing and stuff like that, they do fill a need. And just the whole argument of, well, stick with the cabs, stick with the unions and stuff like that. Unfortunately, we just don't have that luxury right now, the way I see it. But if you're going to become predatory about it, which I think Uber is crossing into that territory, then yeah, why not just go to Lyft? And I think most people are doing that. I myself, I actually haven't like straight up deleted my Uber app yet, but I totally plan on it. And I plan on just using Lyft. I mean, I haven't noticed a difference between the two as far as service goes.
Yeah.
So, why not just give my money to the other one? It makes sense. And I have a feeling that's what we're going to see. I have a feeling this could be it for Uber. I really do feel that way.
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
I think a lot of people don't really see a difference between the two. Any driver can just switch teams. Most
yeah.
play for both anyway. So, I mean,
Sure.
if one gets forced out, you'll just play for the one. And I think in the scheme of things, it's not going to make much of a difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, you brought up some larger points that we'll have to examine in another show, like the whole issue of the sharing economy and how it is kind of bullshit, but it is us trying to do what we're gonna do. But to get back
Yeah.
to Uber versus Lyft, I mean, here's their response, right? So after the backlash, Uber put out a statement saying, "We're sorry about any confusion about our earlier tweet. It was not meant to break up any strike. We wanted people to know that they could use Uber to get to and from to JFK at normal prices, especially tonight." So again, your standard corporate response. Now, you mentioned people are switching to Lyft, right? Well, Lyft actually had a statement about this. They basically denounced the Trump's Muslim ban and said, quote, "We stand firmly against these actions and will not be silent on issues that threaten the values of our community." Now, they also promised to donate $1 million over the next 4 years to the ACLU. So that's $250,000 a year. That's a pretty decent chunk of money. Now, that said, Lyft is not some giant, or tiny little startup. Lyft is valued at $5.5 billion, whereas Uber is valued at $68 billion. So that's a lot of money. So when you think about it, $1 million, kind of chump change, but hey, whatever, we'll take it, right? But anyway, the whole point is they're in competition, and Uber messes up, kind of screws up, according to some people with this tweet, and here comes Lyft to save the day and to be the good guy. But I want to point out that they're both not good guys. They're both corporations. They both want to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And let me be clear here. I'm saying this is because you have to remember that they're not people. They are corporations. They make decisions based on profit, not morality. Now, sometimes that means doing bad things and doing stupid things, right? And we all know that. We cover that all the time. But then, other times, they make decisions that are actually pretty decent. They do good things. And look, do I believe that Lyft's founders, John Zimmer and Logan Green, are decent people that look at this and go, "Ooh, that Muslim ban, not good. I'm kind of against that." I actually believe that yeah, because most normal, regular, decent human beings would be against such a thing. But the same thing is, this is where it intersects morality and business. You do the right thing, and you might actually get some money for it, and you might get increased business, which is what we're seeing. So, and look, the ACLU donation, got to give them credit for that, because that is smart business. Right. So, look, do I think Lyft is a great company, bravely standing up for American values? They did the right thing, sure. That's the same thing. I don't think Uber's an evil company for doing what they're doing either. I just think they're corporations and they have zero morality because they are not people. They're machines. Now, their owners have their own morality. I mean, you've mentioned the CEO of Uber being on Trump's team, right? The Trump's advisory board. But remember, he's sitting next to Elon Musk. Now, unlike some liberals that are like, "Oh, Elon Musk is an asshole, traitor, whatever." He's sitting on. I don't think that he's a bad person for sitting on Trump's advisory board, because look at it doesn't invalidate the good that Tesla is actually doing, right? I mean, what's your opinion on this?
No, I mean, I see what you're saying, and I pretty much agree with you. I mean, to make it as if all of Lyft's actions are totally 100% altruistic and nothing else, of course that's not the case. You're right. These are corporations, these are businesses, and they're looking out for their bottom line. On the same note, as you pointed out, to assume that there's no accountability or integrity in any corporate structure, well, it totally shouldn't be that way. There should be a little bit of that. And I think in this case, Lyft demonstrated some of that, whereas Uber didn't. I mean, Uber made a fault, whereas Lyft made the right call.
They exploited on
And
that fault too.
huh?
Lyft exploited that fault that Uber had done.
I think exploited's a bit harsh, but
No,
yeah,
no, 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 no,
I mean
no.
maybe took advantage of it, definitely
Yeah,
used it to their advantage. I think
exactly.
exploited's a bit far, but yeah, I mean exactly. It's not all altruistic, of course it's not. But, you know, when certain corporations maintain a bar of integrity that's slightly higher than others, you know, like that's something that I think people ought to notice because, you know, these companies aren't going away. And, I'm
Hmm.
not a fan of corporate America at all, and neither are you. And we talk about this on the show all the time. But you know, do I recognize differences between something like a Starbucks and something like a Walmart? Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. You know, I mean, those differences are real.
sure, absolutely. And we got to point out those differences in corporate culture and what they do versus what they say. And we just like the reason that I want to point this out, though, that I keep going back to it, is because we have to remember that corporations are not people, and they will do what's in best for profit, whether that means doing good things or bad things, and not to try to assign them. Because I see with all these stories that I was looking at earlier, that they were trying to assign human values and human emotions onto companies that are not human beings. And yes, in trying to praise them as if they're good human beings, which we know they're not. So and that's the overall point that I'm trying to make. But
Hmm.
when it comes to Uber, I mean, if you don't like the way that Uber conducts its business practices, then by all means go over to Lyft. And look, if you don't like Lyft, go over to Uber. That's fine. At the end of the day, they're both corporations. They're both out there to make money. They will do good things. They will do bad things. And you just have to, remember they're not people. They're not people. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent, non-corporate media, go to our Patreon page and become a patron. Patreon.com/TYTNation.